All set, sir. The account is officially closed. The young woman behind the bulletproof glass slid a snipped debit card across the counter. I gave a curt nod, picking up the ruined plastic, fully intending to drop it into the lobby trash can on my way out. 10 years of a knot sitting heavy in my gut. Today, I was finally cutting it loose. My name is Carter Brooks. I'm 35, and I run a mid-sized private security firm in the city. A decade ago, the best friend I ever had in the Army Rangers, Daniel Vance, wait, let's go with Daniel Foster, borrowed 15 grand from me. It was every dime I had to my name back then. He told me it was an absolute emergency. I didn't ask a single question. I just wired the funds. And then, he evaporated. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts were left on read, then eventually stopped delivering. Even in our tight-knit circles of veterans, it was like Daniel had been wiped from the earth. My initial panic warped into worry, then mutated into a slow-burning, toxic rage. And finally, into total, suffocating disappointment. $15,000. That was the exact price of the brotherhood we'd forged in blood and sand. It was the price of my capacity to ever trust the word brother again. Sir, the teller's voice snapped me out of the past. I frowned, the impatience bubbling just beneath the surface. Is there a problem? She pointed a manicured finger at her monitor, looking hesitant. It's just, this last transfer. The $15,000. There's a memo attached to the electronic receipt. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. A memo? It was a counter wire from 10 years ago. You're mistaken. I remembered that day with photographic clarity. I stood in this exact lobby. I never filled out a memo line. The girl shrank back slightly at my tone, but held her ground. It's right here in the system mainframe, sir. Printed on the legacy receipt. Do you really not want to see it? It might be important. Important? Could it bring back my life savings? Could it erase 10 years of feeling like an absolute fool? My chest tight with an old, familiar aggravation, I just wanted to get out of the sterile air of the bank. I wanted to scrub the name Daniel Foster from my hard drive for good. No need. It doesn't matter anymore. I turned on my heel. It's 4 words, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Save my daughter. Daniel. My boots anchored to the linoleum. The blood in my veins stopped dead. I whipped around, staring at her through the glass. What did you just say? My voice was so hoarse I barely recognized it. Startled by my intensity, she quickly spun her monitor around so I could see it. There it was. Standard Arial font, glowing coldly in the digital receipt box. Memo, save my daughter. Daniel. My brain short-circuited. How was that possible? Daniel's daughter, Mia. 10 years ago, she was a tiny, vibrant thing with pigtails who used to chase my own son around the backyard, covered in mud and laughing. She was a perfectly healthy kid. Why would he use save my daughter as a reason? And why sign it? I was the one making the transfer. Was he leaving a breadcrumb for me to find? A sudden, suffocating wave of dread wrapped its fingers around my throat. Over the last 10 years, I'd spun 100 theories about why he took the money and ran. Did he gamble it away? Did a business venture go under? Did he get mixed up with the wrong crowd? Not once did I consider that there was a truth hidden beneath the surface, a truth I was entirely blind to. Print it out. Please. Hurry. I stepped up to the glass, my hands visibly shaking. The teller hurriedly hit print. I snatched the warm paper from the tray. Those 4 words were like a branding iron pressed directly into my retinas. The dam of resentment I had meticulously built over 10 years suddenly cracked, giving way to a pressure I couldn't ignore. I pushed through the bank's glass doors. The midday sun stung my eyes. Leaning heavy against the door of my truck, I fished my phone out of my pocket. Operating purely on muscle memory, my trembling thumb dialed the number I had sworn to God I would never dial again. We're sorry, the number you have reached has been disconnected. The automated female voice looped in my ear, cold and detached. In the past, that voice only fueled my cynical rage. Today, it sent a spike of absolute, primal terror straight into my heart. 10 years. I had hated him for a decade. What if I was wrong? The thought sprouted, then rapidly metastasized like poison ivy over my rationality. No. I had to find him. I had to rip the truth out of him myself. The bitterness of the debt was gone, replaced instantly by a mystery so vast it made my head spin. This wasn't about the 15 grand anymore. This was for my own sanity. This was for the ghost of the brotherhood I had despised for a decade. I was going to find the truth. I started the engine and drove aimlessly, letting the rhythmic hum of the tires ground me. My mind was a Rolodex spinning out of control. When Daniel got out of the service, he moved back to his hometown, a rusted-out, working-class borough in Pennsylvania, about 300 miles away. His disappearance coincided exactly with that move. Pulling over into a diner parking lot, I put the truck in park and started scrolling through my contacts. I hit the dial button for an old ranger buddy who was still active duty. Hey, Smitty. It's Carter. Carter Brooks? Holy hell, man. Long time no hear. What's going on? Need some intel on a ghost. Daniel Foster. You got any current coordinates for him? The line went quiet for a beat. Danny? Man, don't even get me started. Guy punched his ticket home and just dropped off the grid. Couple years back we tried putting together a reunion. Nobody could track him. Rumor mill said he struck it rich and cut ties with us grunts. Others said he hit rock bottom and was too proud to show his face. Who knows? My gut plummeted. You remember the town? Let me think. Somewhere up near Pine Ridge, PA. Don't know the exact neighborhood. Been 10 years, man. He's probably long gone. I hung up, but I wasn't stopping. I dialed 4 more guys from our old platoon. The answers were an echo chamber of Smitties. AWOL. Complete radio silence. My last shot was our old platoon sergeant, retired now and spending his days restoring classic cars in Ohio. When I brought up Daniel, the old man sighed heavily. Carter, you and Danny were thicker than thieves. If you can't find him, what makes you think the rest of us can? Sarge, it's life or death. I need anything you've got. Any scrap of a lead, I pleaded, my voice tight. He paused, the sound of a wrench clanking in the background. Wait. His wife. Diane. I think I've still got an old cell number for her in my files. Don't know if it's active. My heart gave a violent kick. I scribbled the number down on a napkin. But I didn't call. Instinct, the kind beaten into you in the military, told me that a direct approach would only spook the target. Using the name of the town and some contacts in private security, I ran a deep background check. It took 20 minutes to pull Daniel's last registered address from a decade ago. Pine Ridge, PA, Redwood Apartments. Building 3, Unit 401. Without a second thought, I threw the truck into drive and merged onto the interstate. 3 hours later, I was standing in the parking lot of Redwood Apartments. It was a decaying, brutalist relic. Peeling paint, blown-out hallway lights, and the heavy scent of stale smoke and damp rot lingering in the air. My stomach was a knot of conflicting emotions as I climbed the concrete stairs to the 4th floor. I had played this reunion out in my head 1,000 times. Sometimes it was on a busy street. I'd grab him by the collar, slam him against a wall, and demand to know why. Sometimes it was in a dive bar, him drunk and crying, begging for my forgiveness. I never pictured this. Showing up to a rundown housing project like a repo man. I stood in front of 401. The dark brown paint on the door was chipping away, revealing cheap particle board underneath. I raised my knuckles, hesitated, lowered them, and finally knocked. Thump, thump, thump. I heard the dragging shuffle of footsteps. The door creaked open, just a few inches. The security chain was engaged. A middle-aged woman peered through the gap. Her eyes were hard, suspicious, and immediately defensive. Yeah? Who are you? Her face morphed and clicked into the memory I had of Diane, but weathered by time and etched with deep, bitter lines. Hi, I'm Carter Brooks. Served with Daniel. I need to see him. The second the name Carter left my mouth, Diane's entire demeanor shifted. The baseline suspicion instantly ignited into unfiltered, venomous hostility. Don't know you. Danny doesn't know you. She tried to slam the door. I shoved the toe of my boot into the gap. The decade of resentment, mixed with the adrenaline of the last 4 hours, made it impossible for me to stay polite. 10 years ago, I gave your husband $15,000. Don't stand there and tell me you don't remember. Her reaction was explosive. 100 times more volatile than I expected. Like a cat backed into a corner, she shrieked. What 15,000? You're out of your mind. We never took a dime from you. You're one of those scammers, aren't you? Get the hell away from my door before I call the cops. Her voice was shrill, echoing down the hall. A neighbor poked their head out of a door down the corridor. Fighting to keep my temper in check, I pulled the folded bank receipt from my jacket pocket. I'm not making this up. Here's the wire transfer record. It has his memo on it. I held it up, pointing to the words, "Save my daughter. Daniel." Diane's eyes darted to the paper. All the color drained from her face, just for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. She recovered instantly, doubling down on her frantic denial. Fake. You faked that. I don't know anything about a memo. You're completely psychotic. I want to see Daniel. Let him tell me to my face. I pushed my weight against the door, trying to see past her. The apartment behind her was dark, the curtains drawn tight. She blocked the gap with her body, feral and desperate. He's sick. He's been sick for years. He doesn't see anybody. He can't handle people like you stressing him out. You leave right now or I'm dialing 911. I'll tell them you're trespassing and trying to extort me. Slam. She threw her entire weight against the door, engaging the deadbolt. My nose was inches from the wood. Through the thin door, I could hear her pacing and muttering. Freaks, 10 years later, and they're still coming around like vultures. I stood in the dim hallway, the blood roaring in my ears. Her reaction was entirely wrong. If this was just a case of someone dodging an old debt, she would have been evasive, guilty, or dismissive. This wasn't that. This was terror. This was a frantic, desperate attempt to keep a lid on a pressure cooker. She said Daniel was sick. Sick for 10 years? Too sick to make a single phone call? Too sick to see a guy who took a bullet for him? And the flash of sheer panic in her eyes when she read that memo, that wasn't acting. Something was deeply, profoundly wrong here. I didn't leave the complex. I walked downstairs, got back into my truck, and backed it into a spot directly across from Building 3, giving me a clear view of Unit 401's windows. I killed the engine. Reaching into the center console, I grabbed my pack of cigarettes. I lit one, the ember glowing orange in the cab. Through the haze of smoke, I locked my eyes on those heavily draped windows. I was going to figure out exactly what kind of hell was hiding behind that cheap wooden door. 10 years of anger had pivoted on a dime. All my hatred, all my disgust, was now squarely aimed at the woman named Diane. I sat in the truck for the entire afternoon. Chain smoking. The window cracked an inch, the ashtray filling up fast. I played Diane's facial expressions on a loop in my head. Every twitch, every dilated pupil. She was lying. And it was a massive, structural lie. One she'd been carrying for a decade. What the hell happened to Daniel? And what did save my daughter actually mean? The mystery was a tangled mass of barbed wire in my brain, pulling tighter the more I tried to unravel it. The sun dipped below the tree line, painting the rust-belt sky in bruised shades of purple and gray. Streetlights flickered on, casting sickly yellow pools across the cracked asphalt. My stomach was hollow, growling in protest, but I didn't move an inch. The stubbornness drilled into me by the military kept me glued to the leather seat. I wasn't leaving until I knew. Just as my patience was beginning to fray, the heavy metal door to Building 3 groaned open. A young woman stepped out. She was carrying a black trash bag, walking slowly toward the dumpsters at the edge of the lot. As she stepped under a streetlight, my breath caught. Mia, Daniel's daughter. 10 years had transformed her from the little tomboy who used to follow me around into a quiet, striking young woman. She was wearing blue scrubs, maybe a nursing student, and carried a weight in her shoulders that made her look far older than her early 20s. As she tossed the bag into the dumpster, her eyes darted nervously toward the shadows where my black truck was parked. She was fidgeting, restless. My pulse spiked. Did she recognize me? Or did she know I was coming? Instead of walking back to the building, she altered her path, drifting slowly along the curb, inching closer to my side of the lot. My heart hammered against my ribs. She moved cautiously, her hands buried in her scrub pockets, scanning the parking lot like she expected an ambush. Just as she passed the passenger side of my truck, she suddenly crouched down, pretending to tie her shoe. In one lightning-fast, practiced motion, she slipped a tiny, tightly folded square of paper through the 1-inch crack in my window. Before I could even lean over, she was up and sprinting back to the building, disappearing through the heavy doors like a frightened deer. The whole exchange took less than 5 seconds. It took me another 3 to process what just happened. My fingers trembling, I reached over and plucked the paper from the weather stripping. I flicked on the overhead cab light and unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, but the pen strokes were jagged with anxiety. Carter, please don't leave. My mom is watching from the window. Alley behind the dumpsters. 10 p.m. Please. I need help. That small square of paper was a lightning bolt, instantly incinerating the fog in my brain. Daniel was in trouble. Diane was the warden. And his daughter, Mia, was risking everything to send up a flare. The decade of bitterness and perceived betrayal evaporated, instantly replaced by a crushing, absolute sense of duty.